This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
(8:45 p.m.) This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. The news edited by Lakshman Fonseca and read by Geethanjali Ramanayaka. The headlines. The President of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, arrives in Singapore. Parliament sessions scheduled for tomorrow, the 15th of July, have been cancelled. Forces and police have been empowered to maintain law and order. Colombo Administrative District is under curfew. Reinstated exclusive fuel arrangement for health workers. Trains from outstation areas to Colombo suspended. Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca ready to accept presidency. Protesters have decided to leave the occupied state buildings. In foreign news, Ukrainian president blames Russia for the crisis in Sri Lanka. News in detail. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the president of Sri Lanka, flew from the Maldives to Singapore and arrived there on a flight after widespread protests against his rule. He has not requested asylum and Singapore has not granted any, according to the Foreign Ministry of Singapore. It's not clear if Mr. Rajapaksa will stay or move to another destination. In response to the island's economic crisis and rising public ire, he promised to step down by Wednesday, but has yet to do so. The scheduled parliamentary sessions for tomorrow, the 15th, have been cancelled as per Parliament's Communications Department. An earlier gathering of party leaders decided to call tomorrow's session of Parliament to announce President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's formal resignation. Despite promising to resign on the 13th of July, the President has not yet submitted his formal letter of resignation. The forces and police have been empowered to enforce and maintain law and order of the country. The army said in a statement that this has been practiced since the country became an independent state and a free nation, through which the sovereignty of the Republic, freedom of expression and free movement of the public as enshrined in the Constitution. They said that except for a few negligible arguments and skirmishes between the protesters and members of the army, no major incidents of violence of considerable nature occurred due to enforcement of law and order since the beginning of the struggle. The army also urged the protesters to desist from all forms of violence immediately or be prepared to face consequences as members of the armed forces are legitimately empowered to exercise their force. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.
Scan the Lanka QR code and make your payments with People's Pay mobile payment app from People's Bank.
The Colombo Administrative District is under curfew from noon today to 5 a.m. tomorrow, the 15th of July. According to the Government Information Department, the curfew was imposed in accordance with the Public Security Ordinance by Acting President and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. No one is permitted to be on any public road, railway, park, recreation area or other public ground in such areas during that time, according to the curfew order. At 5 a.m. today, the island-wide curfew that had been in effect since noon yesterday was lifted. Additionally, the acting president had instructed the security forces to detain anyone acting aggressively and to seize any vehicle that they were travelling in. The action was taken as large crowds of protesters gathered outside the Prime Minister's office and other key locations in Colombo, which later were captured by protesters. The exclusive fuel arrangement for healthcare workers will resume tomorrow, according to the Ministry of Health Secretary. The information was released today in a letter addressed to the Secretaries of the Ministry of Defence, Power and Energy, and Public Administration, Home Affairs and Provincial Councils. In order to maintain the nation's healthcare system, as per Health Secretary Janaka Chandragupta, it is crucial to make fuel distribution to healthcare workers easier. The General Manager of Sri Lanka Railways says that trains from outstation areas to Colombo have been suspended due to the curfew. He added that the trains leaving from Colombo in the evening will run on the regular schedule. The Galle-faced protesters have made the decision to leave the state buildings they have been occupying since last Saturday, the 9th, according to a protester representative. The announcement was made during a press conference that a group of protesters held at the scene of the Gota Gogama at Galle-face. Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca claims he is willing to accept the presidency if the majority of parliamentarians choose him for the position. He claimed that some MP groups, including a group from the SLBC, had asked him to run for president. The former army commander told a media briefing today if he is elected, he will accept the post. He added that the protester groups that they should not be in a hurry to hand over the state buildings which are held by them. And that ends local news for now.
Nobody tells time like this. So why do you still pay with cash when you have People's Pay mobile app from People's Bank? Scan the Lanka QR code and make your payments with People's Pay mobile payment app from People's Bank.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
The main news story, aid agencies are warning the health and well-being of 6 million Sri Lankans could be in peril as the country contends with extraordinary political upheaval and punishing economic collapse. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme warned some 62,000 Sri Lankans are in such a dire situation they require urgent help.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
And in world news headlines, Ukrainian president blames Russia for causing the ongoing crisis in Sri Lanka. British MP calls for international arrest warrant against Gotabaya Rajapaksa. US and Israel jointly pledged to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. World news in detail now. The current crisis in Sri Lanka has been attributed to Russia, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who also noted that the blockade of food products during the invasion of Ukraine has led to unrest throughout the world. Zelensky claimed that one of Russia's strategies for invading Ukraine was to create an economic shock in his speech to the Asian Leadership Conference in Seoul. Due to the ongoing crisis and supply chain disruption, countries are experiencing food and fuel shortages, which has contributed to their civil unrest and benefited Russia's agenda. And this concerns not only us. Look at just one example, he said. The events in Sri Lanka, the shocking food and fuel price hikes led to a social explosion. No one knows now how it will end. However, you all know that the same explosions are possible in other countries affected by food and energy crisis, Zelensky said. Embattled President Gotabaya Rajapaksa should be placed under arrest according to Ed Davey, the leader of the British Liberal Democrats. He added that United Kingdom should work with international partners to issue an arrest warrant on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. In order to support the Democrats in Sri Lanka, Davey continued, the UK should collaborate with other nations on a comprehensive economic and political solution that includes the issuance of an arrest warrant. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and Yair Lapid, the Prime Minister of Israel, signed a joint declaration on Thursday pledging to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, demonstrating the allies' unity after years of disagreement over how to approach Tehran diplomatically. We will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon, Biden told a news conference following the signing of the declaration. Since years, Washington and Israel have each made covert statements about potential preemptive war against Iran, which denies wanting nuclear weapons. However, there has been some disagreements regarding whether they have the capacity or motivation to carry out this. The United States stresses that integral to this pledge is the commitment never to allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon and that it is prepared to use all elements of its national power to ensure that outcome, the statement added. Lapid portrayed this stance as a strategy for avoiding direct conflict. After the signing ceremony, he declared the only way to stop a nuclear Iran is if Iran knows the free world will use force. Tehran did not immediately respond with a comment. Back to the headlines of the world news. Ukrainian president blames Russia for causing the ongoing crisis in Sri Lanka. British MP calls for international arrest warrant against Gotabaya Rajapaksa. US and Israel jointly pledge to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And that ends world news. Moving on to a bulletin of development news. The Joint Apparel Association Forum thanked all industry stakeholders for their outstanding resilience in ensuring that the sector continued to meet its commitments. It said in the face of unprecedented challenges, all stakeholders has performed a remarkable duty. They added apparel export earnings expanded by 30% year-on-year, up to $446 million in May 2022. Accounting for approximately 6% of Sri Lanka's gross domestic product GDP and almost half of all merchandise exports, the apparel sector serves as a bulwark of the economy. And that was development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
The Sri Lanka Cricket Selection Committee selected 18-member squad to take part in the upcoming Test series against Pakistan. The series is scheduled to begin on the 16th of July 2022 at the Galle International Cricket Stadium. It will be made up of 2 matches and be played in accordance with the ICC World Test Championship cycle of 2021 and 2023. Squad will be led by Dimuth Karunaratne. And there are sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business News, sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
Fitch Ratings said the ongoing economic crisis, the worst Sri Lanka has ever seen in its post-independence history, would test the country's largest bank's resilience as their asset quality, earnings, capitalization and liquidity could come under tremendous pressure. It is reported some banks are expecting their non-performing loans ratios to rise to an unprecedented 10 to 15% during this period as corporate and household balance sheets have come under enormous pressure due to the economic downturn hampering their ability to service their facilities. And that was business news.
Business News, sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Economic News, courtesy of
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
The UN said more than 60% of Sri Lankans were already choosing to limit meals to stretch their food budgets. In one dire example of the length some vulnerable people need to go in order to eat, Britain's Sky News reported some families travel nearly 10 kilometers on foot to get free meal from a community kitchen in Colombo. And that was economic news.
Saving money isn't easy when you have responsibility. That's why we promise to give you the best returns and guarantee on your investment. LOLC Finance Fixed Deposits. Maximize your savings. LOLC Finance PLC, incorporated on the 13th of December 2001, is rated SLA stable by ICRA Lanka Limited and is licensed by the Monetary Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Finance Business Act number 42 of 2011.
In the weather report, the Met Department predicts several spells of showers will occur in the Sabaragamu province and in the Nuwara and Kandy districts. A few showers will occur in the western and northwestern provinces and in Galle and Mathura districts. Strong winds about 50 kilometers per hour can be expected at times in the western slopes of the central hills and in northern, north central and northwestern provinces and in Trincomalee and Hambantota districts. And that was the weather report, and to end this news broadcast, back to the headlines. The President of Sri Lanka, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, arrives in Singapore. Parliament sessions scheduled for tomorrow, the 15th of July, have been cancelled. Forces and police have been empowered to maintain law and order. Colombo Administrative District is under curfew. Reinstated exclusive fuel arrangement for healthcare workers. Trains from outstation areas to Colombo suspended. Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca ready to accept presidency. Protesters have decided to leave the occupied state buildings. Foreign news, Ukrainian president blames Russia for the crisis in Sri Lanka. And with that, we end this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.